Um, Good to meet you all. My name is Jennifer. I'm chair of the garden operating committee. I've been gardening, this will be my 9th season here at Ben Franklin Garden, and just want to welcome you all. And if we want to go around the room and introduce ourselves, we're all going to see a lot of each other. We'll probably be gardening near each other. Lots of times you'll share things with your neighbor, like a hose or some sweet potato slips or something. So one of the things that I love to grow up here in the garden are sweet potatoes do really well. And so I'm looking forward to that this year. So I don't know who wants to start.
I can. I'm Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
I live like walking distance, so I'm very excited to be here. My little backyard has no room for a garden.
Great.
I'm Chris. Similar. I live close down the road and don't really have room for a garden. I'm excited to have this opportunity.
Awesome.
Harry, pretty much same, small backyard. We're local as well. So it's walking distance.
I'm Erin.
Me too.
I'm Lindsay. Live in an apartment. No room for a garden.
All right.
Yeah, I'm Connor. Same deal for the apartment.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Tori.
Dory.
I'm Megan. I live right there, so it's nice to meet all of my neighbors now. So, hi everyone.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I live over there not far, and I've never really gardened before, and I thought it would be better to do it around people than to try it out on my own.
Awesome.
I'm Alicia. I'm the one you guys all spoke to. And this is my son, Louie. You'll see him and his little brother playing in the dirt pile over there. You'll see them live.
And I'm Greg, the garden coordinator. You'll probably see me every day we're here. So I'm the guy that opens and closes the gates.
All right, so I'll start off with just a little bit of history about the garden. In the early 1920s, the Cleveland Municipal School System bought 11 acres here. This was a farm. And on the front 5.5 acres, they built the school. The back 5.5 acres they were using as a stock nursery to provide the plants for the landscaping and the beautification of all the Cleveland Public Schools. At the time, the superintendent was really big into horticulture, and they started a small class here, and the kids liked it so much they made it a citywide program. It was mandated in the Cleveland Public Schools that you had to have a garden. If you didn't have a garden here for the summer, you had one at home. Even if you lived in an apartment, you had like a window box and your teacher would come out and grade you. They taught classes at night for adults. So it was a really big program. When busing came in, the first program they cut completely was the horticulture program. Their plans were to bulldoze everything here, put in some asphalt, and put up parking garages for the buses. The neighbors who lived here along Tampa did not want to look at that every day, so they fought with Old Brooklyn Development Corporation to keep the property as a community garden. So that's how Ben Franklin got started. This will be the 40th season in operation as Ben Franklin Community Garden. So we are a program of Old Brooklyn Community Development Corporation. So this is just kind of a exciting graph that tells you about Old Brooklyn and how it works. So if you would have some type of issue that we can't resolve with the garden committee, and who you would go to would be Old Brooklyn. This is kind of a map of how the garden's laid out, but we're actually going to go out there and walk around and look at it. Most of your plots here are, if you got a full plot, it's 20 by 25 feet. If you got a half a plot, it's half of that. We ask that you start planting your plants at least 1 foot in from the paths and 1 foot in from your neighbor. That way you and your neighbor can walk around and you can weed in between the gardens, and none of your stuff is encroaching on your neighbor. However, if you're planting something like pumpkins, you want to go more like 5-6 feet away from the walkways and from your neighbor, because that plant grows much larger. So just want to be aware of what you're planting along the borders. What I usually do is I plant a solid border of marigolds all the way around my garden, keeps the squirrels out. The squirrels kind of go around it, and kind of keeps everything in too. Makes me remember to stay inside, but you don't have to plant something all the way around, but you can. If you're on the asphalt walkway out there, we ask that you plant a row of flowers out front, like zinnias. We're a monarch way station, and the butterflies come in every fall. You'll see the monarch butterflies, you'll see hummingbirds, and you'll also see the golden finches out there on the zinnias. Even if you're not on the asphalt, it's nice to have some flowers in your garden because it brings the pollinators, attracts them into your garden. All right, so this is just a picture of a couple of gardens here. This is a nice garden. It's well tended. You can see here they've kept up with the weeds. They're not using any type of weed blocking material or mulch or anything. They're using tools, like Greg will show you here, his favorite tools. Realistically, if you go over your garden once a week, either with a hula hoe or a 4-prong rake, and you would use kind of like this. If you can see, it breaks off the weeds right at the crown, breaks down their roots. And if you do that once a week and knock down any weeds that are growing, you won't have a problem. As you can see, this is totally overgrown. The crabgrass will come in and it'll just totally take over your garden, and everything will be spoiled. There's some tomatoes mixed in here. You can't even see them. This picture here, you can see they're using weed blocking material. You're allowed to use weed blocking material here. However, in this picture, this is a heavy plastic. It doesn't allow the water to go through it. We ask that you don't use something like that. This type of weed blocking material you would want to use like in permanent landscaping where you don't want anything to grow. Enough water is not going to get through this, and it will superheat the soil, especially if you use the black plastic, and it's going to kill all the good microbes that are in the soil. So if you do buy a material for weed blocking, you want to make sure it's not too cheap. If you can see through it, the weeds will grow through it and it'll grow underneath it. You will still have a mess that looks like this at the end of the season. However, you will be trying to pull everything out of the ground and it'll be all grown in. So if you do make an investment of a little bit better of a weed blocking material, you can use it from year to year. So it's not, it may seem expensive up front, but you'll have it for a long time. Anything you put into the garden, you have to take out with you at the end of the year. So you want to think about that when you're putting down your materials, what you're using to hold it down, those types of things. A lot of gardeners will use newspaper and straw, and at the end of the season you can just leave it there. You don't have to pull it up at the end of the year. All right, some things that aren't allowed at the garden. No herbicides. Herbicides would be something like preen. They prevent seeds from germinating is basically how that they work. So if you use the herbicide in your garden this year, might be beautiful, you don't have any weeds, you decide to not come back next year, and the next person wants to plant some bean seeds and some carrots, and none of their stuff's going to come up because this stuff is still in the soil. So we ask that you don't use any herbicides like preen at the garden. Don't plant anything invasive like morning glories and mint. It will never go away. We ask that you don't plant corn or sunflowers. The reason for that is it will shade your neighbor's plot because they're so tall, and also the squirrels here just obliterate it, so you won't have any crop. It says no off-season cover crops. If you are interested in planting some type of cover crop in your garden, just ask one of us on committee or Greg. We can let you know what's good to plant and what's not. We ask that you don't use 7. We have beehives here on the grounds, so you don't want to use just a broad spectrum type of pesticide. It will kill everything. So while we do have some issues and you have to take care of some pests, we ask that you just don't use 7. A lot of gardeners use things like neem oil and diatomaceous earth. We'll actually probably be having a more in-depth class about that online next week. I'll let you guys know. There'll be an email coming out about it. A master gardener is going to do an online session. And then last, no unauthorized removal of garden assets or produce. So we provide tools, we have carts, we have wheelbarrows. They're all here for everybody to use. We ask that you keep it on the property, that you don't take it home with you, no borrowing, that type of things. As far as produce, whatever you grow in your garden is yours. You're free to take it home. If you have access, we ask that you donate it to the hunger centers. We'll have a cart out front of the shed there. But we ask that you don't take anything off the hunger center carts. If you know somebody who's in need, we're more than willing to help out, but you kind of have to make arrangements with us. So don't take anything off of the hunger center carts. What else? Yeah. So we do have a few pests that come to visit us. I know, I don't know if how many of you made it to the kickoff meeting. I talked about them a little bit. We have things like the Mexican bean beetles, and I guess I don't have them. Oh, here they are. So on these, we'll put these up front. We're going to have them laminated and have them on hand, kind of as a quick reference for pests. So these flea beetles, for instance, at the beginning of the season, they're up here and they really will attack eggplants. So we suggest if you're going to plant eggplants, wait a few weeks to bring them up to the garden. Plant them in a little bit of a larger pot. Let them get at least 4 or 5 true leaves on them, because they will stand up better to the flea beetles when you initially come up. But on all these cards, they show you the different stages of the pests, what they look like in their larva stage, their adult stage. Shows pictures of the damage they would do to your plants, and tells you things you can use on them, as far whether it be neem oil or diatomaceous earth would be a good choice. Also, this year the Master Gardeners have an on-demand hotline. You can take pictures, you can text them, you can send them emails. If there's something going on in your garden, you say, hey, what's going on with my plant? You can take a picture of it, you can email it to them, or you can send it through a text message, and they'll get back to you and let you know what the problem is and how you can take care of it.
So one thing, talking about bugs, the Mexican bean beetle loves our garden. And what you'll find is towards the end of the season with your bean plants, you'll end up with these little yellow dots on the back part of your leaves. That is the bean beetle. When you see them, you want to smash them. If they completely take over your plants, you want to pull those plants out, put them in a garbage bag, take them home and throw them in the trash. We do have compost bins here. They're back here. Jen will show you guys when you do the tour. You can put your weeds in there, so if you want to pull your weeds, and then you can put them in there. Anything that is infected, you do not want to put in there. So if you have like tomato plants with blight or something like that, pull them, throw them in a garbage bag, take them home. We do also talk about compost. If you notice when you walked in, there's a trash bucket out here. That's our compost bucket. That's open to the community. So while the garden is closed, if you want to compost at home, throw your vegetable peels, your clean eggshells and stuff like that, you're more than welcome to drop it off here. Once we open, then you could take it and put it in the compost. Or if you really are feeling adventurous, dig a hole in your plots, and that could be your compost where you throw your weeds and your peels and stuff like that. I do it every year. This one digs the hole, and we throw all our weeds in there, and by the end of the year, the soil is so nice, and I'm so happy because I know it's going to help me next year. So that's something else. What else do we forget?
Right, talk about volunteers.
Yes.
Okay, so every gardener is expected to do 5 volunteer hours or pay $10 per hour that you don't do. As you can see, we have a huge garden, and it requires everybody because we don't receive any funds. We get funding for our garden at the end of the year, but not for the rest of everything else that needs to be done. So we always look for grants and things like that, but a really main important part is you, the gardeners. So We'll have opportunities to do things throughout the year. They'll be posted. You might receive an email. Take it seriously, because if you don't do the hours, you're not going to be invited back next year. And don't wait until the last 2 weeks to say, now what can I do? I didn't do it throughout the year. Now, we also, encourage creativity. So if you have a skill that, that you think that gardener could use, like we have a couple people working at Ready Grants right now. They've already done all their volunteer hours. We're always looking for carpenters, plumbers. But again, if you have a particular skill set that you have, like if you do a fundraiser at your work, that kind of a thing, you could, say, hey, I'm going to do this fundraiser. It's going to take me a couple hours to get everything set up, but I'll make the donation to the government. So that's a creative way, to put a couple hours in. That's going to help the garden. So, just, people look out for that. And again, this is a community garden, so what you give just goes back to everybody.
We wanted to mention about overgrown plots.
Okay, so for overgrown plots, if something happens and you can't garden, just please reach out to one of us and let us know. If you're a few weeks into it, something happens, I don't know, move out of town, just anything happens, you can't garden, we can have volunteers take over that plot and still get a harvest out of there and donate it to the hunger centers. If you're going to be out of town, say you're going on vacation or something, just kind of let somebody know. A lot of times you might ask one of your neighbor gardeners to water for you or keep an eye on things while you're gone, but it's always good to let somebody know that you're not here. We will be walking through the garden at least weekly to look for gardens that we think are kind of in trouble. We do allow gardeners 2 weeks to kind of fix things. We understand you can't really do it overnight sometimes, especially once it gets overwhelming. But we at least like to see that you're making the effort. Please do not be offended if you get a phone call and somebody says, hey, your garden looks like it needs to be weeded. It happens to all of us. We all sometimes get behind in things. But it's really important to keep up on it. At the end of the season, if your garden is not tended, it will look like this. It will be completely overgrown. This can happen just in a few weeks worth of time. You can't just come to the garden and plant everything and come back in a month and have a beautiful harvest. You have to put in the time a few days a week to be up here and just, weeding and tending to that. So unfortunately, we till every year. So every year that you till, you're going to bring up weed seeds. So unfortunately, it's just part of gardening. So if you do get that phone call, it's no offense to you. It's nothing personal, and if you need help, we will help you too. If something happens, you're not well, you can't get out there, we have lots of volunteers that will come and help you. So just don't be afraid to ask. We want everybody to have a successful season and come back the next year. So did anybody have any questions about any of the rules or anything like that?
What was that weed tool that you were demonstrating?
Sure. That was the hula hoe. It's called a hula hoe. So we'll walk around here in a few minutes, and you can check out all the tools and stuff that we have. The hula hoe I think is great. I use it all the time. It's one of my essentials. Also, yes, so in between the plots, you are responsible for your pathway. You have to make sure that that's free of weeds and clear of weeds. If you want to put down some mulch, some wood chips down there, you can. I don't suggest that you put mulch down in your whole garden, because the wood chips will first take the nitrogen out of the soil before they're putting it back in there, and it takes them a while to break down. So if you put mulch around your nice new plants, your plants aren't going to grow. They're not going to have a good root system, because that wood mulch is going to take the nitrogen out of there in the beginning, and that's when you really need it to grow.
So one thing is when you have your pathway, say your garden's on this side and your neighbor across from you is this side, you guys are both responsible for that spot between your garden. If you're a nice person, you do the whole thing. There's some people where I see where one gardener only does half.
They're half.
And so the other part gets all grass and weeds and stuff like that. So if you're nice enough, you're gonna do the whole thing. But yeah, if by any chance we do get wood chips, they are only for pathways. They're not for your garden. It's if by chance. Jen, mentioned you can put wood chips down in the path. You want to put a nice thick layer down. You're more than welcome to go to Home Depot or Lowe's and buy those bags and put them down. You just need to put a thick layer. You put a thin layer. Guess what's going to grow through there, and guess what's going to get harder to pull out? So your weeds.
The pathways are generally walked on a lot, so it's usually not a whole lot of maintenance in the pathways, but people have to be able to get their carts and stuff through there. So
If you take that little hoe every single time you come and just run it down it, you'll be fine.
yeah, like 5 minutes you can go over the little path. Yeah.
I mean, this one does our pathway.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, I can't remember if it was when I got the initial call that there might be like partnering for new gardeners with more experienced gardeners, or if that was, I was on a wait list for 2 gardens, so I don't know if that was the other garden, if it was, I'm so sorry.
We don't actually have a program like that. I know a few people on the committee were talking, they wanted to work in those respects.
You're more than welcome. Any gardener you could walk up to. Everyone is super, super friendly. It's how I learned. I know Jennifer's learned from gardeners here. I'm sure Mark is one of those people who've been here forever. They can answer questions for you if you can find them.
Yeah, well, you're gonna see the chart posted, so the things that are in yellow are gonna have like committee members. So the dark plots, so you can seek one of us out, you can see us, there, just yes. But again, there are a lot of gardeners here, who have been here for a long time,
Thank you.
And if you want a little more one-on-one, I have somebody I can ask who would like to work with you. So
Yeah, great. I'm like an urban girl. I will say I don't
Sure.
think I've ever run anything in my life. So
Yeah. Well, even as a more experienced gardener, you learn new things every year. And every year is different just because of how the weather is. So, I mean, one year you'll have a great crop of zucchinis, and the next year it'll be tomatoes. So, every year is a little bit different. So, but we'll definitely, whatever help you need, just let us know, and we'll help you get started and down the right path.
And you look at gardens too, you might ask the gardener, why do you do it that way? Because I like to do, I like to cake my tomatoes, I like to steak my tomatoes. I do them both together, and I tie them up so they grow really, and I put stuff in the soil, and every plant I put in, I put soil in first before I put the plant in, so that the root system grows really well. So if you see someone and say, why is that, or why are your plants doing so well, then that would be a person to kind of say, hey, what knowledge do you have? What can you teach me? And that's what it's all about. And the first year is going to be, trial and error. And then after that, you'll catch on and find out what works for you.
So one of the things you do want to do is you do want to add soil amendments to the soil. This garden has been gardened for over 150 years because before the school had it, it was a farm. So a lot of things were really high in phosphorus, which is what weeds like. We do need nitrogen and what's the other one? I can't remember.
Calcium.
Yeah, nitrogen is a big one.
So, adding blood meal or, Epsom salts and stuff like that too when you plant your plants definitely will help produce a good plant.
Compost is great. We're working on making more. We will be spreading some leaf humus and compost through the garden as much as we have. We'll spread it as far as we can go. A lot of the sections where the new gardeners are this year are the sections that are getting a lot of the stuff. But we will be sending out, when will the newsletter go out? Okay. I'm just waiting to hear back from the master gardener, but she is going to talk about soil amendments and pest control, and that'll be next week. And if you can't make it to it, I believe it's going to be next Thursday, and it'll be on Zoom or digital in some type of way. But it will be recorded, so if you can't make it to that, then you'll be able to have it for reference. And we're also trying to work on getting some more videos online just to help gardeners throughout the season to give tips. And another good source is the Cuyahoga County Master Gardeners. If you go to their Facebook, to their website, they have classes on Saturday mornings. Sometimes they're free, sometimes they cost $5 or $6, but really, really informative. I attended one a couple weeks ago. It was about tomatoes, and it was a good refresher, and there was a few things that I learned in there that I didn't know about. So it's a good resource to the Master Gardener. So we'll have the signs up on the bulletin board, and we can put it also in the newsletter that's going to come out, the Master Gardener email and phone number that you can for their hotline. And also on Thursdays we do have Master Gardeners here in the garden because they tend to some of the gardens here. So if you're here on Thursdays or you see them out there watering, you can always ask them questions and they'll help you out too.
In, I think it was February, there was one of our committee members came up with a list of a lot of like YouTube sites that are gardening. What I'll do, listening to you guys, I'm hearing, I'm thinking maybe I should put it back into the newsletter. So you can always click on it and then go through those, and it's really informative. I actually, when I was putting everything together, I was finding myself watching it more than I was producing the newsletter. But two other things, if you're not on our Remind yet, I think I told everybody I spoke to sign up for a Remind. That's a text messaging service that we utilize. That is really, really important because that is how you get the updates, especially with the garden opening. We are slated to open the 22nd, but I can tell you we probably will maybe not if everyone keeps doing the rain dance, because when it rains, he can't get out there and plow. So the text messaging service, the Remind, is literally as he's raising the flag, I take a picture and I send it out saying garden's open. So that's how you will know the garden's open, is the first through the Remind, and then it will come through other channels. But the Remind is the first thing. So I've done that for 4 years now that we've had that.
The nice thing about the Remind too is not only can we communicate with you guys, but you guys can text back to us. So if you've gotten a Remind message from us, you can just click on there, and if you have a question, it comes to Alicia and I. So as long as our phones are by, we'll be able to answer you guys pretty quickly. If something's going on, that's an easy way to get a hold of us. If you need something right away.
It doesn't broadcast it to anybody else. What it does is it creates a phone number that is only between you and I. So we can text back and forth that way. When you do sign up for it, it's a service that actually the schools use. So it'll ask you if you're a parent, teacher, or student. It doesn't matter. Click whatever you want and just go through the process. And it's super easy. And if you don't get text messaging on your phone, you could do it by email. And if you want to do it that way, you actually have to go on our website and click on the Remind button on the left-hand side and click on it. You send a blank email to an address. I can't remember what it is. But you send it to that, and then you can get email notifications instead. And you can also still email back to us, and it will respond back to us as well.
So. Is that it?
For me.
All right. Any other questions or no? Okay, so I do have a map back there if you guys haven't seen where you are yet, but I wanted to go outside and kind of walk around and show you what the different areas are. We don't have the plots marked yet, obviously, because we're not plowed yet, but I can give you a general idea of where things are, so when you come in, you can just get started.